Hello, my spooky friends. This is John, your host for Dairyland Frights. And I want to thank each and every one of my spooky friends out there who made a successful 2023 here at Dairyland Frights. And most importantly, I want to thank all my guests. You guys are amazing. I love you all. I look forward to having each and every one of you back on the show in 2024, as well as some new guests to have fun with and get some great stories. This is a best of, but just a sampling of some of the great stories in 2023 from my guests. You want to go back and listen to the full episodes because there's so much more. Again, thank you so much. I look forward to a successful 2024 at Dairyland Frights. And always stay spooky.
And just a little bit about myself. I've been kind of independently working as a paranormal researcher. I've had like odds and end jobs in the background as well, but my main like focus has been paranormal research for, if my memory serves me correctly, like 8 years. I was trying to do the math the other day and I'm like, it's somewhere in that like 7-8 year range. Right. I'm not the best at math. I'm not going to lie. So, don't quote me on that. But yeah, so for about 7 or 8 years, I've been working as a paranormal researcher, kind of digging into different like urban legends and paranormal stories, to kind of try to make sense of it all. If any of your listeners have heard of me or as you and I have talked, I've had a lot of experiences just, throughout the years that I've been trying to make sense of. Right. And that kind of led me down this path of paranormal research and paranormal investigations. So, yeah, that's kind of my background in this field.
That is awesome. So Courtney has a little bit of a problem. Maybe you can help her listeners. She's getting locked out of her house by she believes, an entity. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. There's a lot to this house and just to my own like history. I've spoke about it in passing on various different people's podcasts as well as my own. But yeah, so this house specifically has just kind of a weird history to it. I don't want to like triangulate to where I live, right, but it has a connection to an unsolved murder in my town, in southwestern Montana. Nothing happened here, like just to.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'd be able to like mentally handle that, just knowing that like some sort of tragedy happened. But this house does have a connection to an unsolved murder in my town. So there's a part of me that believes that it might be the victim, unfortunately.
Oh boy.
But also I have just always had paranormal experiences. So who's to say that it's just not something else coming in and out?
Doesn't know them.
Oh, right.
For example, so let's take an example in Madison.
Yes, please.
Majestic Theater, right? Gorgeous theater, built in 1906. So it's over 100 years old. It's this great vaudeville place for decades. Then it kind of runs into disrepair. It's a porn theater for a while, as the Barrymore was right by my house, as the Barrymore was too in the 1970s. And so like a lot of these beautiful movie houses that, were great in the early part of the 20th century. They eventually fall into disrepair and they're just used for skin flicks. And then later on, they're renovated into music venues. So first time I went to the Majestic was to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show in the 1990s. And they used to have They used to have the Rocky Horror on every Saturday night at midnight. And love Rocky Horror. And so we went down and go watch it, have a great time. A few years later, I'm working on the Madison Ghost Tour. And by this time, the Oriental had shut down as a movie theater. Not the Oriental. That Oriental's in Milwaukee, different haunted theater. The Majestic in Madison. Majestic shut down for a while as a movie theater. It's reopened as like a VIP club with bottle service and everything for a while. 2004, 2005.
Yeah.
Then that shuts down again. And by this point, when I'm working on that, I don't even believe it had reopened as a music venue yet. So now we just had the Majestic Theater sitting there, derelict for several years. Right. And I put out a call, probably on the internet or in different places or maybe in the one ads or whatever, when I'm looking for ghost stories, working on the tour. And I'm looking for things specifically around the Capitol Square because I wanted to be a walking tour. And so I needed a route that people could do in 90 minutes to 2 hours, like the length of a movie. Where, you wouldn't be like, I've been on ghost tours that go for 3 hours long. It's like, where's the bathroom, guys? I'm going to go on my pants.
Right, exactly.
And so you need something. You try to create an experience for people that's fun, it's interesting, and it's comfortable. So it can't be a death march or whatever. It's got to be an easy walk. It's got to be long enough so you don't have to worry about a bathroom break. And it's got to be enough places where you feel like you've seen enough of the city to get a good idea of it. And so I put up my ads looking for, hey, anybody had a ghost story in this area? And I get a call from a guy who used to be the stage manager of Rocky Horror at the Majestic in the 90s. And I'm like, all right, let's talk to this guy. And he talks about the Majestic Theater. He's like, yeah. He goes, man, that place super haunted. In their dressing room he's like, they called it the green room, their dressing room. Yeah. Where they would get ready and they, because in Rocky Horror, to people who haven't seen it, they may have seen it on TV, but the movie theater experience was that there was a live cast in front of the screen who would act out the film while the film was going on. Yeah. And so you would, there's a part they get married, you throw rice. There was a part with squirt guns, depending on the theater. And some theaters allowed the squirt guns, some theaters didn't. Right. That you would just toss these things or do these things in the middle of the film at these certain points. And everybody would sing along to the songs with modified lyrics and the whole deal. But a live cast would act out the movie in front of you. So there would be a group of people who had the movie memorized and they would be acting out and do all the things and turn around and the scenes. It was really fun. And you see, he was the guy who kind of got everybody together and stage managed the cast for the Madison production of Rocky Horror. And he said that in the green room, there was a ghost there that wouldn't leave any of the girls alone. Like, he would hide their brushes, hide their makeup, kind of mess with their hair, like pull on their hair.
A little fresh.
And things.
Yeah.
And so their theory was that it was a spirit who had killed himself inside the Majestic Theater. He was an actor back when it was a vaudeville theater 100 years ago.
Oh, sure.
And so the actor had killed himself inside the theater over a broken heart, and that's why he was annoying the girls, and they called him Joe.
Oh, okay.
I was not able to find any. I mean, usually suicides don't get in the newspaper anyway,
right?
But I wasn't able to actually, verify anything about this actor that killed himself. But it's an interesting story that they would tell. And they were definitely having paranormal experiences there. Okay. He says the last night of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right before the Majestic closed down as a theater, and I think, in 2000 or whatever was when it closed down for the first time. He is walking out of the green room before the show starts. And he hears a whisper in his ear, "Good luck with the show." And there's nobody there. And he's like, I didn't go back. Oh. He's like, that was the last time I stepped foot in that green room.
I'm going.
Okay, fast forward. Okay, so I was designing the Madison Ghost Walk in 2010. And 2013, I'm having a music conference in Chicago. And like I said before, I play in a band, sunspotmusic.com, Dairyland Frights fans. But
Thank you.
So I'm at this music conference and I'm hanging out with one of the interns at the Majestic. And everybody's just talking, we're having beers, talking about music and music industry and all that kind of stuff. And our favorite bands. And she asked me, she goes, "Hey, you're into ghost stories, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." And she says, "Okay, what can you tell me about the Majestic?" And I said, "Okay, why don't you tell me what you know first? Because, you work there."
Yeah.
She goes, "Well, I don't know too much, but I tell you, every time I'm in the women's bathroom, I feel something weird, like somebody's grabbing at me, or I'm feeling being watched, or it's a weird.
Yeah.
And the other ladies had that same kind of experience in the bathroom. So she goes, we don't like the women's bathroom at the Majestic. I'm like, that's interesting, because between the 1990s and the 2010s, when it reopened as a music venue, the area that used to be the dressing room, the green room, is under the stage. And so that's what they turned into the bathrooms under the stage. So the very same room that the people had the experience in Rocky Horror, where Joe was annoying the girls, fast forward 20 years, and now it's a girl's bathroom. Now it's not the dressing room. Now it's been remodeled and all those kind of things. People are having the exact same experiences in the exact same space, decades apart, without even knowing the story of Joe or the kind of legend that had kind of happened in the meantime.
Love it.
And so to me, that's like, okay, now that's interesting, because people from different times who have the same experiences in the same place. And so that one is one of my favorites in Madison, at least, of people having similar experiences.
Here's one spooky story I can share with the audience.
Oh my God, I have so many spooky stories. I'm going to tell you, I've told my UFO ones. I'm going to try not to tell that one right now. Okay. People sick of it. But I'm going to tell one that I actually had, and I have no, I don't know what it was or what ended up happening, but I'm going to tell you how it happened. I moved into one of these like manufactured home communities years ago when my parents divorced. I was pretty young. I was possibly like 20 something. I don't know, my 20s. And I was living with my mom and my sister. Everything was cool. And our home was in front of a lake, but behind us was a lake. In front of us was a landfill. So it wasn't like the best place to live, but it's what my mom could afford at that time and what we can do. But anyway, that's like beyond the point. The point is manufactured home, not, the best quality home sort of stuff. So it was very easy to hear things all the time, especially outside and stuff. And my room was the first room. As soon as, like, when you walked into the door, my room was to the left. So I was the first room of the house, let's say. And my window looked toward the road. Well, couple nights I start waking up hearing these very deep, guttural, sort of heavy breathing noises. And that, like, I was like, what in hell what is outside? I had never heard of that, anything like that before. And I mean, I'm like a nature person. I used to like trek the Everglades all the time. I know what a lot of these animals that we have around here sounds like and stuff, right? So like, I was just like, okay, I don't know what that is. Yeah. And I remember one night hearing it, and it sounded like it was almost like dragging itself across my window, like from on the floor. And I was just like, I am terrified. Like, I froze. I was like, I'm terrified. I don't even want to know what that is. So I never looked. Yeah. Anyway, I just like, whatever. Few days passed, maybe months. I really don't know. The timeline's all blurred at this point, right? I just know that another day I woke up to something again making weird noises, but this time it threw a rock at my window, and I hear the rock break toward the window, and I was like, oh shit. Oh no. I was like, oh shit. Like, I was like, what is going on? And at that point, I'm like, I'm going to ignore it. Like, I'm going to pretend like it's not even there. But as soon as I'm like, I'm going to try to shake this off. Like, nothing happened. Nothing broke. You understand? As soon as I said that, I hear these these taps. Like, it was, and I will never forget how it sounded, because it was very short and very quick. It was ba 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 ba. And I'm like, what the heck is that? So it just sounded like, what the hell? Yeah, it wasn't galloping, because galloping is more like da-da, 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 da-da. This wasn't that. This was da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh my God. So the next morning, I'm like, no, I got to investigate. I don't know if I'm hearing things or this is like sleep hallucinations or whatever. So I grabbed my sister. I remember grabbing my sister, and we had just painted our home. So our house is freshly painted and our driveway is freshly painted. So I go outside and I see the rock on my window, like on the floor. It's still there, broken in pieces. And it was a relatively like nice shaped, like big sized rock. So I was like, okay, well, that's weird. It couldn't have just been kicked up. Do you understand? Like something had to throw it. But the weirdest, the freakiest thing, and I will never know what it was it left a half moon shaped foot mark on my fresh paint. And it just looked like a little new moon, like a little like crescent moon, sort of like, but I don't know.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing. And we were all looking, my sister and I kind of looked at each other and she was like,
that is weird.
What was it? And I was like, I don't know. And I told her everything. And ever since then, like we never heard or saw anything again. But that was pretty terrifying.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. You're braver than me to go outside. I imagine you did it in the light of day.
Oh, yeah. The next morning. Heck no, I wasn't going out
right?
at night. No.
Okay. I was like,
No.
Deborah, what are you doing? Going in the dark? Are you crazy?
Nope.
Come on. Haven't you seen a horror
I know
movie?
the rules. I know how to be a final girl. Okay. Like it's not happening.
All right. Okay. So you're going to die last.
For sure.
That's good to know if we're ever in a situation.
Yeah.
I can count on Deborah. Awesome. So Vera, do you have a favorite or spooky personal paranormal experience you would like to share with us?
Oh, definitely. Of course. I mean, I will have to go back to my cave here that I investigate.
Nice.
And we'll just say that a lot of events ended up tragic from me investigating the cave, as in I lost 3 chickens because something took them. Don't know if they're killed, but took them because there was no blood. You know, all there was feathers. And that's a whole other story. But when I did investigate the cave a few months ago, and 3 different mediums from 3 different states who do not know each other, I was in there and they had watched a video, they had said that they had seen like a skinwalker type that's in the cave. And I've actually caught a very dark black shadow manifesting from an inky blob to a vertical human or vertical figure, I should say, because I say it's human because I don't know. But a lot of experiences here have really opened my eyes. They've been more of the negative, evil kind of entity. What it said is that there was a shaman that thousands of years ago, like maybe 1,000, 2,000 years ago, had banished some of the Indians that lived here because they were delving into magic that was not good, of course, for the tribe. And so they were banished as skinwalkers in the cave, and they are trying to get me to let them out. That's how it was said to me.
That's amazing, because obviously you're familiar with Skinwalker Ranch, correct?
Of course. And my place has been pretty much, because I have UFO activity here, Bigfoot activity here. Like there is a supposed Sasquatch pod that lives around this property. I've caught the Bigfoot howl on an EVP recorder session before, which, if you go on my Instagram, go toward like the beginning of when I started my Instagram for the Conversation Cabin, and there you'll find I've posted a lot of the evidence that I've gathered. Again, this is why I started doing it, because I don't know about you, John, but aren't you tired of like when you tell someone that you saw something or you took a picture of something and they say, well, that's not what it is. But then you ask, okay, well, then tell me what it is. And they can't.
Right.
So then I went out there and found my own answers. But again, when I went into the cave the next day, that's when I lost 2 more chickens. So something in there was trying to give me a clue, like, do not come into my place or I'm going to come out to your place.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And that is absolutely fine, fascinating, because I don't know, here in Wisconsin, our main cryptid is called the Beast of Bray Road.
Very much about that.
Yeah. So it's like a werewolf creature. I talked to the owner of American Ghost Walks on one of our episodes, and he said that, again, nobody knows what this thing is. It could be an interdimensional being. It could be, some cursed skinwalker. It could be a number of different things. And one of the things he told me, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but he said when he was out, he was at this barn and he was a kid and, stupid. It's one of those deserted barns in the middle of nowhere, and cliche scary barns in horror movies, and went in there and there were all these chicken bones all over this barn, in the walls, on the floor, everywhere. And he was like, how's that, is some kids do that for fun, or is this, and this was in that area too. And people have found, like you said, chicken bones all in this area, but no one has really get definitive proof of that. But and it's hard to explain, right? It's hard to say like, well, it's a werewolf. Oh, okay, I get you. Sure, it is. Kind of attitude,
Right?
And there are things out there like that. It's just hard to prove to somebody who are extremely skeptical about.
Well, I do
what
have a picture of a dog man. What looks like a dog man, and it's actually several times. We have a very strong smell that comes through our air conditioner that's in the bedroom of a very, urine. Very, very strong urine, like, 3 barrels of urine has been dumped right beside our air conditioner, and it's just flooding into our house. So we have some different, activity like that as well. And you're right. The one thing that, everybody wants to see that holy grail, but these beings are, I've talked with the best researchers. I've talked with Nick Valente, who is the founder of the International Dogman Project. Jessica Jones, the Cryptid Hunters, who is like a boots on the ground researcher. And I can tell you from, talking to Nick and Jessica and some other friends of mine that are Bigfoot, Dogman kind of cryptid researchers, that there's something out there. It's the fact that many people have to start or stop thinking that they're just flesh and blood. They are some sort of supernatural as well. So then that is the way that they are able to stay elusive. They can travel through different portals, from different corners of the world. And, we just cannot be so closed-minded, narrow-minded to think that we're the only living kind of species, humanoid creatures in this entire cosmos. There's just no way. And when you look at what we do to each other on a daily basis, this can't be all that there is, because then if there is, then someone did something awful, because you just don't treat people the way that we see the negativity, being spread. And, it's so easy to divide us. So again, there has to be other things.
This was back in, 2009. This would have been like iPhone 1 era. So a lot of people still had regular, not Polaroids, but regular 35 millimeter printouts. And he showed me this printout of, on the main level in one of those corner towers, this wispy apparition of what looked like a man. And this sounds so cliche. And if somebody told me this, I'd call them, say you're full of shit. But it looked like a man in a fedora holding a Tommy gun in this wispy apparition. And this was before, modern day, where it's easy to like Photoshop and print something out. Like somebody actually captured this. And I was very intrigued by that. And I wish I had known what happened to that photo, because shortly after I moved out of that apartment, it was renovated and turned into the Wonder Bar. And it's unfortunate that I think it was a casualty of COVID. And if you're a Madisonian, there are a lot of people looking to move to the Madison area. They want to live in the downtown. They want to live by Lake Monona, Lake Mendota. And they are tearing things down as fast as they're building it. And this is one of the sites. Yes, it's a shame because we need to keep Madison weird, and we need to protect some of this historical heritage and not just make everything high-rise apartments. That's kind of my screed for the evening. But it's one of the places that has been on the list of places to tear down and redevelop. And it'd really be a shame because it's, I have a personal connection to it because it was, the first bar that I went to when I came to Madison. And
right. Yeah, me too.
And it just has such a rich history of, gangster lore to haunting. Yeah. So it like checks all over the boxes for me. And if it went away, which I assume it probably will be moved and reconstructed somewhere if we're lucky, if not raised. But if it is knocked down, I'm going to have to go grab a brick or something like that for a memento because it was a great place and it's great. So unfortunately, I don't have the best news about that one, but definitely an awesome place with lots of history and legends.
So, what do you think of the list? Is there anything you would add? Is there anything, John, you missed this one?
The one that I would add is we were talking about the Port Farm, the Wood County Asylum. Let's talk about the Sheboygan Asylum.
Oh,
now,
right.
It's just outside of Sheboygan. The Fox Valley Ghost Hunters, the same group that I went to Summerwind with, they run tours there, and I got a chance to about a year ago to visit. And it has a similar history to the Wood County Asylum, but it sounds like the treatments weren't as horrific. It sounds like they treated their patients a little bit better. So at least that's what they tell you on the ghost hunt. So I hope that's true. Yeah. But there is a lot of activity there. There's one little room they call the chapel where, the tour guides kind of the way that the Fox Valley Ghost Hunters tours work is a lot of times you go on these ghost hunts and they'll just be like a tour guide that will walk you through and tell you like a scary story. With the Fox Valley Ghost Hunters, they're ghost hunters at heart. So they will bring all of their gadgets and gizmos and they will try to involve the group in a group ghost hunt. And, we had the EVP, or not the EVP rope, the EMF rope laid out with the little lights on it. And whenever something gets near and changes the EMF, it changes the colors. We got so much activity in that room and lots of spirit box activity. We got to visit that chapel. We got to visit there was like a cold storage for the bodies. We got to go into that room and conduct a seance. We got to go into some steam tunnels and had just an incredible experience with the spirit box session there. So anybody who wants a little thrill, I would definitely recommend the Sheboygan County Asylum. And the Great Lakes Paracon is coming up next month.
In the paranormal.
Okay, well, I grew up in a haunted home. I had my first experience when I was like 6, younger than my daughter, who I take on my road trips when I can. Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and looked over and thought my mom was sitting. I had like 2 twin beds side by side. And I looked over and thought my mom was sitting with her back to me. And I was like, Mom. And she moved. And when she moved, I could see through her face. And so that was like my first experience was a full-bodied apparition. And then she just disappeared. Like, even talking about it, I get like chills thinking about it. Like, she disappeared. But so I do paranormal road trips. I go around the state of Ohio, but I just became the brand ambassador for Get Haunted, so I do my road trips with them. But I mainly do my paranormal road trips, and so my hashtags are like Be Like Bree and Paranormal Road Trips. You'll see me all over socials, and I try to bring the history into the haunting because there's no haunting without history. So that's my.
And I love that. Yeah, I love that about your clips, Bree. I when I saw you on, I think I saw you on Twitter for the first time. I'm like, I gotta have her on my show. She's so interesting, and she goes to interesting places. And you're just not there to like some people are there to scare, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to go into the tunnel now and, oh my God, there's something there, run. And I'm like, okay, I get it. It's fine. But you're a little more informative, a little more fun. And that's what I love about you. So that is awesome.
Oh,
so can I ask you a question about your experience really quick?
Yeah.
Was this a residual haunting? I mean, did you see this woman? You said you didn't see her again. Is that correct?
Well,
like she wouldn't show up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, when you were 6 years old.
I don't really remember if I saw her again. There's no way I will ever forget seeing her because it was my mom. And when I told my mom the next day, she actually pulled out a picture of my great grandma. And that was who I actually had seen was my great grandma, come to find out. So, I mean, I've had paranormal experiences my whole life. That house, I mean, we'd have poltergeist activity. So even where we live at here, we've got 2, possibly a third spirit. So I don't know if I accidentally brought a hijacker home or one can sense that I'm sensitive to stuff. Like I can hear and talk. So like, I don't know if one decided to be like, hey, let me come hang out with you because I'm here.
Yeah, I love that. One of my former guests, she has a cave on her land that she believes a cryptid is in there because she has like a farm. And she woke up one morning and all her chickens were ripped apart, like an animal. And she's like, it's not a wolf, it's not a bear, it's this and she's been in this cave trying to figure it out. But she said there's something on there, and I'm like, damn, that is scary.
Whoa.
I don't know. I've never lived in a haunted house. But I just love the paranormal just for the sole fact of talking to people like you and everything. One thing, though, I have to ask you a question. Is when COVID was happening and you were at home, did you notice any more like paranormal or less? Would you say?
Well, I've been in this house since 2021. When COVID hit, I actually lived in Wisconsin. I lived in Racine. So in the building that I lived in was one of the original houses on the north end of Racine. It was a storefront down below, and then like where the family would live up above. And we always had really heavy activity. The kids, like I don't know if you've ever heard of the Hat Man.
Yes, I have.
We had the Hat Man in the basement that would chase the kids up, like when it was their turn to go do the laundry, like the Hat Man would chase them up the stairs, and they kept telling us there's a man wearing a hat downstairs, and we'd be like, I mean, I believed in it, but my husband at the time was very much like anti-paranormal, and so
skeptic,
I was like, oh yeah, but then like behind closed doors, I'm like, I totally believe you. Like I know he's down there. I haven't seen him, but I believe you. And like I would say that there was a lot more activity because like my one son John, when they closed the schools, like a couple of his friends didn't have anywhere to go. I mean there wasn't much to do with kids, and so I was an essential worker, and I was working in an office for a company that made parts for like air tanks and like the stands that you see the Purell pumps in, like they made those stands. So I was in the office handling all the orders, but I was like, if you've got a friend that needs a place to go, I mean, I know we're not supposed to be around each other, but by God, I'm not going to let a kid be home alone, like bring your friends over. And it did pick up because one of his friends like started antagonizing, and like I got home one night and he was in there antagonizing, and I was like, no, we don't do that in this home. You're not the one who lives here. We do. But ironically, whenever he was in the house, the spirits would like, and they started antagonizing him back. Like they weren't mean to him, but they would start messing with him and his stuff. And so he got to the point where he was like, all right, Mom, I'm not going to do it again. And I'm like, thank you. Like, you're going to learn your lesson, like,
Yeah.
And like one of the boys was like, "Oh my God, there's a demon in here," and I'm like, "No, it's no, you're being an asshole, and they're being an asshole back." Okay, like,
right?
What do you expect?
Exactly.
You know, I'm not gonna go to your house and like start picking on you and name calling and expect you to just be like, "Oh, I love you. You can stay forever." You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things about people don't understand about spirits is they were alive at one time, right?
Yeah.
And just like a regular person, is I come up to Bree and say, "Hey, Bree, your hair looks terrible tonight." You'd be like, "What? You know, screw you, John." It looks great, by the way.
Oh,
it looks great. But if I said that, then, you know, it would be like, "Hey, that's kind of hurtful. I'm going to mess with your hair," right? If you were a spirit and you would like, whatever, do something to my hair, maybe, right? Just a mess.
Totally.
Right. But if I say, "Oh, Bree, you look beautiful tonight. You have beautiful hair," you might be like, "Oh, thanks, John." And, you know, maybe put a cookie out for me or something. I don't know.
I would do something nice. Yeah. You know, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Figure something out. I got one here that likes to help with the laundry. So, you know, maybe I'd go help with your laundry.
Oh, can I have that?
Right. I call him Bob. So I don't know where Bob came from, but Bob's what keeps popping in my head. So we run with it. It's Bob that's in the basement and likes to fold laundry. He keeps opening the dryer. So
oh, it's so nice of Bob. So do you have a personal paranormal experience that you like to share with my audience? It can be scary, it can be funny, whatever you want to share. That's one of your favorites.
Oh my gosh, I've got so many, especially now that I've been doing a lot of like events and investigations.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm out there. Like, I'm actually going to be going to an investigation this Saturday too. So
you'll
be seeing that. Yeah, I'll be going live from. I'm hoping the Wi-Fi will work and I can go live from the location. I'm really excited. So, the building in Racine actually, the owner was selling it, and so. I had to come home from work to let a bunch, like there's like 2 or 3 different realtors that were coming through, and they each had like 2 or 3 different groups that they were walking through. And we have cats. So I was like, well, I need to be there to make sure these cats, you know, my rescues don't get out. I'm not a crazy cat lady, but I had a cat and each kid had a cat. So we had 4 cats.
Right.
But, so, you know, I made sure they did the walkthrough of the living quarters upstairs, and they went down afterwards to the empty shop below us, and they were supposed to lock up when they were done. So I go downstairs and the door's like wide open, and I'm like, okay. So like I'm calling out, is anybody in here? Nobody's responding. So I'm calling like the landlord, and I'm like, can you verify that everybody's done? They left the door open. And I know you told them to shut everything up. And he was like, oh, yeah. I just got the text. All the realtors are done. You can go ahead and close it up. And I'm like, okay. Well, where I was at was we always use the back entrance to the building. And so you got the back door. And then there's the door that goes down to the basement, the door that goes upstairs, and then the door that's straight ahead that would go into the shop. But that door, if you slammed it, like you had to slam it hard because it was like a door that would pop back. And so, like, I put every ounce of weight behind it, slammed it, and the door bounced back. And I'm like, well, that shouldn't have happened. So I go to close it, and an arm reaches out. Like, I can see I can see the body. I can see the arm reaches out, and it's got, like, the Victorian lace. Like, I even got goosebumps talking about it right now.
Oh,
I can see the Victorian lace going down her arm, and it came to, like, the V. And it was, like, a gray arm that you could see straight through. Grabbed the handle of the door and slammed the door shut. And I was like, with that, I'm going back to work. I was like, you have a good day. I'll see you in a couple hours. You know? So that was probably one of my favorites, because to see full-bodied apparitions, to see, you know, especially to see them grab a physical object and manipulate that physical object. You don't ever, you know, how often do you really see that, you know? I mean, so that's probably one of my favorites.
Oh, I love that story. So I'm a pretty big guy, but I always tell my spooky friends, I am not ashamed to say I've screamed like a little girl and run the other way. You are more braver than I am. Yeah, I'd scream like a little girl and bam, I am gone. And people would be like, what is that little girl? Oh, it's a guy. Oof. You're my hero. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out.
I won't lie. I mean, I did turn around pretty quick, and I was like, "You have a good day. I'm locking up. I'm leaving now."
And lo and behold, bam! During that sicknesses must have been when it attached to me. Mm-hmm. So as we drove away from the cemetery, I started feeling better and better and better, and finally, we got about 3 miles away. I was fine.
Yeah.
So over the next month, something was tormenting my daughter. She was seeing a shadow in the room every night. Larry and I tried to film it. I called him immediately and told him what was going on. Mysteriously, the camera that I would set up kept getting turned off. And I had a pretty new son in the house at the time.
Okay.
So, we decided that, it was an attachment. And when it really showed itself to me, and I'm empathic. So, I'm not sensitive, I'm not psychic, but I'm empathic. Oh, yeah. And sometimes, little things get thrown into the back of my head from spirits, a name or a phrase or something or a feeling. Right. And, I was standing outside and I was talking to my good friend Tom, and he was from Massachusetts and he ran a team out there. And I was telling Tom, Tom, there's something in my house. And I was standing in my backyard and my kids had a swing set and there was 2 swings. All of a sudden, John, one of them started moving and picking up speed. Oh. And then it stopped abruptly. And I'm telling Tom what's going on. And all of a sudden, in my head, I can hear, I'm going to do what I want around your daughter, and there's not a damn thing you can do to stop me. Oh, no. Oh, wow. So what I'm getting at is it's hard enough to fight something, and it's really hard when you can't see it. Yeah. And so Larry and I enlisted a friend of ours who's a psychic, and enlisted another friend of ours who I'm not going to mention their names because the one psychic who actually helped us do this does not want to have to do this anymore. So, gotcha. Yeah, that's she. She has to remain nameless in the whole thing. But Larry and I performed a cleansing in the house. Good. And it was the most wild thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Prior to this, our interactions with people with juju powers are extremely limited. We're just a bunch of fat dudes that like to
surround the county. Part of the big issue up here is we have a lot of limestone. We are an escarpment. It's part of the Niagara escarpment, but that limestone continues out of the bluffs down underwater. And so there's a lot of a lot of hazards and a lot of reefs and shoals that you need to avoid. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know how to navigate the area, you can get in a lot of trouble. And Death's Door happened to be, that was like the doorway into Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And it was actually named by the French after they had found the evidence of a Native American battle that occurred up there. Mm. And they had found so many skeletons that had been washed up on the beaches of that area, and they heard stories for the few witnesses that were still alive when they came through. Yeah. That's when they named it La Porte de Mort, and the British translation of that was Death's Door, and that was actually the suggestion to actually name our county Death's Door County at one point. Right. Luckily, we were a long, thin county, and that didn't all fit on the map. So Death's Door is exciting, and there's a shipwreck story I do tell that's very apropos to that situation.
Yes, Yeah, and we'll get into this, a lot of the different stories here. So I have to ask you this, Ed. Before you started doing the tours, were you interested in the paranormal? Did you believe in ghosts, or did your mind change once you started doing the tours?
Well, I wasn't all in on the whole ghost thing. I was very skeptical about all of it, and just not a non-believer, but somebody who was very intrigued by it and kind of hoping, that boy, it'd be neat to have this experience to really confirm my beliefs, but never really, always skeptical thing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until that date in basically, well, it was right after August 21st of 2017 when that solar eclipse occurred that we had just an explosion of facial images that people were taking. We had, prior to that, I mean, there might have been 4 or 5 in a week's time. And we do these tours. We start on Memorial Day weekend. We go every night of the week, 7 nights a week, all the way through Halloween and some years after, depending on what the demand is. And we have a minimum of 2 trolleys per night, and we're going at it heavy duty. And all of a sudden, we're getting 4 to 5 per week of these fantastic images. Not the explosion that occurred after that solar eclipse. All of a sudden, we're getting 14 to 18 per tour. Everybody taking pictures on the tour was getting a facial images. Different images, different windows. And so I'm thinking, what's going on here? Is it the fact iPhones are just getting better? They're getting their quality, they're picking more of the imperfections in the windows. What's going on here? So I snapped a picture of every single window in that house about 3 days after the 21st. That'd put me about August 24th.
Okay.
And when I got home that night, I opened up all the pictures I did, and the very first one I took was the very best facial image I have ever seen coming out of that.
Of magic and so forth. So many magic workers avoid the terms entirely. So Cynthia, do you not even bring that up when people ask you? Excuse me.
When people ask me, do you black white magic?
Yeah, right.
That's interesting, but I can't answer that specifically because but I told you some things I do is white magic and sometimes I do black magic, but never to harm other people. And the kind of black magic I do is, I think, work with demons. And for me, it's not black magic, but it's a subject from the black magic. If you search that on Google or in the books, it's always black magic, black pact, pact with the devil. But it's also what are you doing with that?
Sure.
A little while ago, I had a new book, and it's about satanic rituals. So I think, that's nice, and I'm going to read that. And there was a episode, and there is saying for you must kill a goat and drink his blood. Okay. Oh, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And people think that's it's black magic, satanic magic, Luciferian magic. That's what they do. They offer animals or people, and they drink blood, and that's not how it works. Being a satanic witch or a Satanist is the magic word in that is freedom, and everywhere it's you must do this, you must do that, and that's not in the Satanic Bible. You must do what you want.
Correct.
As long as you don't harm any other people.
Yes.
And be what you want.
I love that.
I think a lot of people love that because I know the Satanic Temple. I'm a member of the Satanic Temple. And there is a high priester of the Satanic Temple in Salem. And he is gay, and he say in the church, nobody except me. And here, with the Satanic Temple, I can be myself. I can do what I want. People accept me for who I am and what I am.
Yeah.
And that's, I call it freedom. And that's the key word in, the Satanic, witchcraft and the Satanic, church and the Bible, freedom. And, that's, I love that kind of, of the Satanism.
Yes. And again,
always talk about the witches, stuff like that. Well, like I said, they've done some of the research to find out, okay, how did that start? And that's kind of what the spirit tour kind of walks you through. It takes you to some of these locations that are, some of these legends and lore, and you actually get a lot more of the truth of the historical part of how that came about. Oh, definitely. I'll let you talk about Mary Worth, Dave.
Well, I first heard about Mary Worth from Lizzie Wright, the town historian. And she said that Mary Worth was a self-proclaimed witch. And so the legends of Mary Worth are, you hear Mary everywhere, about throughout the United States. In Whitewater, it seems to be kind of the focal point of where Mary Worth maybe existed. We haven't found her grave yet. We've heard lots of stories about where she may be buried. The legend here is that Mary, when she came to the end of her life and was quite ill, she said she wanted to be buried in Hillside Cemetery. And the local managers there, the board said that, no, you can't be buried in hallowed ground. So we won't allow a witch to be buried in our hallowed cemetery. And she said, if you don't bury me there, I'll curse this whole city. So the legend says that they put her in an above ground crypt. She wasn't buried in hallowed ground. She was above ground. So a loophole. So she may be there. We don't know. There are 2 crypts, actually more than that, there's 3 crypts, but there's 2 crypts that are fairly well known now in Hillside. One is called the Public Crypt, which was the temporary holding vault for bodies during the winter. It was too difficult to dig graves in the wintertime. They didn't have the big machinery they have now. So they would put them in cold storage, basically, in an above ground crypt called the Public Crypt. And there are racks inside the crypt, which are still there. And get to see.
And you do get to see those on the tour.
Yeah.
And go in.
The crypt is open. Yes, the crypt is open for the tour.
Yep. So that we would store bodies and would probably hold a dozen or so, I would guess, coffins there. So in the springtime, when the ground thawed, then they would dig, the graves and put them in their final resting, graves. But right next door to it is another crypt, and it's kind of a mysterious one. And we aren't quite sure what happened there. But when I was in school here in the 70s, in about 1971, there was a break-in of that crypt. And vandals had destroyed some of the coffins and scattered bones of those that were in those coffins in that crypt. And they also took there was a baby coffin there that they removed from there and took it over to campus and put it in the fountain. I was going to class and I saw this gathering of people around the fountain, and there was this baby coffin in the fountain. So the police came then and took it back and replaced it back into the proper crypt. And then the gates to that crypt, the doorways were welded shut. They didn't want anybody breaking into it again. So a terrible thing to happen to desecrate the graves, or desecrate the resting place of those people. And there's a few coffins still in there. But anyway, so the legend was that Mary Worth was buried in that crypt. We don't know that for a fact, but it's kind of mysterious that there aren't too many records about Mary Worth. The census of 1890?
Yeah.
1890, the census was burned in a fire, so the records were lost. So that whole census was lost in the fire.
Well, it doesn't help with the fact that crypt also, the top of it, where normally you would see like a family name and stuff, is all kind of been sandblasted off.
And I think I remember when I was in there before this happened, was when I was looking at looking for grave sites, historical grave sites. I remember that crypt very well, and the inscription on top of the crypt was pretty plain. After the crypt was broken into, that was removed. I think people to obscure it so people wouldn't know where to look, for Mary Worth. So it's called the Morgan Crypt.
I can't say it was specifically Mary Worth that we were trying to conjure. That was 35 years ago, and it might have been after partaking a little bit that evening. But yeah, so done. Yeah, a few spirits myself. But yes, did the Ouija board near the cemetery on campus, and I doing the Ouija board there and in a couple of apartments when I was in college, it really freaked me out because the answers that you get were way too accurate, and I haven't done it since. So I wouldn't say the cornfield was necessarily connected to Mary Worth. It was I just remember as a freshman, that was one of the things they'd try to scare you with, because the campus butts up right at that point, right up to farm fields. And that was always the legend, was at the cornfield just on the north end of campus, that you couldn't go across it. You couldn't make it all the way through from one end to the other on Halloween. That the spirits would get you. The children, that might have been before Children of the Corn.
Not really because I've actually delved into, I couldn't tell you how many records here and still do. The amount of rabbit holes I go down is scary, I'll tell you that. But I haven't found anything that even says anything like that.
No, I think Mary Worth is pretty well known in this town. The legend of Mary Worth is pretty common. But there was no trial. I think the records of her have been just lost.
Yeah.
If there was a real person of Mary Worth, there's no record of her. I remember speaking to a elderly person. I won't mention his name, but he was the chairman of the cemetery committee at the time, years ago. And we talked about Mary Worth. He said, "You don't want to talk about her." And I kept pressing him for more information. And I said, "Is she buried there at Hillside?" And she said, we don't talk about that. And then he finally said, "She's been removed."
Or relocated.
Relocated. And that was it. Don't want to talk anymore about it. So very mysterious.
We ventured up to the water tower, and we decided that we were going to jump the fence and go in. And yeah. So at that point, it was just more like a chain link fence. And at the top, you had barbed wire, but it was pointed in. So, most places have barbed wire that's pointed out to try to keep you from getting in. Well, this was tipped inward, so it was almost like it was trying to keep something from getting out from inside. And had it not been one of my shoelaces catching on the barbed wire, I might have wound up inside the gate that night. A friend of mine did, and again, this could have been maybe alcohol induced, but he was trying to climb out a couple of times. We were trying to help him out, and he kept saying, "Dude, something's pulling me back. Something's pulling me back. Dude, something's got me." And when he came out, he had where barbed wire had gotten him on the palm of his hand. And I don't know, I look at mine and I don't see marks, but anyways, it formed like crosses. It formed crosses on both of his palms with the blood. But yeah, he was the one that got into the water. Well, he didn't get in the water tower, but he got inside the fence. And then the cops might have done a patrol around there, and I learned how to climb a tree really fast. And so, but yeah, no. So even then, it was, that was again one of the legends that you start hearing as soon as you're a freshman.
Hosting thing to go. Underground passageways built beneath the hotel during the bootlegging days contained the lost treasures of Al Capone and John Dillinger. So if you know anything about John Dillinger, he was a bad guy. He was a nasty dude. And those two guys together supposedly took all their ill-gotten gain and all their money and put it underneath this place. So people claim there's treasure. Now, right, you think somebody would have found it by now, but who knows? I don't know. I just thought that was interesting that Al Capone and John Dillinger.
Yeah, and why not us to find the treasure,
Why not? Hey, it's good support for the podcast. So as you see, it's very Al Capone, John Dillinger, people dying in their sleep, burned down twice on the same day, or burned down 3 times on the same day, and so on and so forth. A portal to hell, which I always love that. Because it's always like we can't find heaven, but there's like portals to hell everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere, right? And isn't there a theory that Al Capone made a deal with the devil to escape capture?
Yes.
Am I jumping ahead?
No. It is a true story that I'd love to do some Al Capone paranormal stuff, because also Al Capone was known to believe in witchcraft and known to believe in the paranormal. And a lot of people don't bring that up. And in fact, I would like to look up someday, I'll do an episode on this. So the St. Valentine's Day massacre, I know I'm getting off here on a side note, but anyway, the garage that all these men were, murdered, supposedly the bricks are cursed, and the hotel, not the hotel, but the garage is all cursed. So like people, when they were renovating this garage where this massacre happened on St. Valentine's Day, some people took the bricks, for novelty, right? Well, these bricks are so cursed that people who have them, people die in the family, they get in a car accident, they lose their job, they get divorced, like every terrible thing. And people don't know where the bricks are anymore. They just don't know. Like some guy just said, "Oh, get them out of my house," and nobody knows where those bricks are. So,
see, this is a common trend. When you visit a site of something terrible happening, just leave everything. Just don't take anything. Why risk it?
Why risk it? Exactly. So it can be any experience, spooky, personal, like scary. It could be like anything you want, and you can go back as when you were a little kid to now. So tell me a story like you had that you're like, oh man, that was, I remember that.
So there was, when I was younger, I think a lot of younger people are afraid of ghosts and spooky stuff and stuff, what was that sound that came from outside? And so I tended to be a little like, oh, what's that, and the way the house was that I grew up in, my parents' room was at one end of the house and mine was at the complete opposite end of the house.
Oh boy.
And there were a lot of doors in between.
Yeah.
And I grew up, I got up in the middle of the night one night to go to the bathroom, and I had to walk through the family room and the kitchen to get to the bathroom. And off of that kitchen straight line, we had a laundry room. The lights were off. There was a light on in the kitchen. Mom and Dad always left the stove light on or something. And I heard footsteps from the family room or from the laundry room.
Yeah, right.
I could see directly into that room and there was no one there. There was nothing in there.
Oh.
It wasn't so dark
Yeah.
that I couldn't see. And I heard distinct footsteps and a dragging sound. And I was probably, I'm thinking about 13 at the time, 13, 14, the most.
Right. Yeah.
I suddenly did not have to go to the bathroom. And I ran back to my bedroom and got in bed and was terrified of whatever that footstep dragging sound was.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I remember just being scared to death about it.
Yeah.
And then in high school, we had for a creative writing class, we had to write a true story. And I wrote about this story, and my teacher gave me a bad grade on it, which pissed me off because she said it wasn't believable, right?
What?
She said, why wouldn't I have gone to wake up my parents to tell me, to tell them about it? And I was like, because who wakes up their parents when they're that old? So
the other thing is, can you share a spooky personal or favorite story? It can be funny, it can be really spooky. If you could share one, I always love to hear them from my guests.
Yeah, just like an experience I've had or something.
Yes, experience, anything.
Absolutely. I have so many, actually. They're mostly
That's
from
what
my
everybody
childhood.
says.
Yeah, it's true.
It is, right?
Yeah. Let's see. There's one that I really like telling that involves my sister primarily, but I witnessed all of it. And I really like this story. I've actually told it on the podcast before, so you may have heard it. But I like this story because I have no explanation for it. And it's not like a typical ghosty story. It's just very interesting. So
sure.
My sister was over at our next door neighbor's house one day, like the house that sits right in front of our old house. So, you'd walk out the front door, see them right there, see the front yard. And that's important to the story. So she was on a rope swing, just playing, with the kids. You remember those dangerous rope swings that should be outlawed now?
Yes, they should be.
They're so dangerous.
Yeah, I know. It's a string of death.
Yeah, really.
Rope of death.
So my neighbor, Chris, was swinging her and kind of twisting the rope, spinning her around.
Ooh,
and the rope just kept twisting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Oh, no.
And it got caught around her hair. And I didn't see all of this at the time because I was in my backyard, but they're in the front yard playing, doing all this. My parents have friends over in the house for some kind of church event.
Okay.
And I'm in the backyard and I hear this snapping sound and a blood curdling scream.
Ooh.
And the scream sounded like not my sister at all. It sounded like an older woman. And it freaked me out. It was clearly a very alarming scream. So I sprinted to the fence and I climb up the fence and I'm looking over to the front yard of my neighbor's house where the sound came from. Okay. And all I see is the back of my sister's head and her body hanging 3-4 feet up from a rope. Ooh. And the rope appears to be around her neck.
Oh.
So I go into full panic mode. I think I was maybe 13, 14 when this happened. And my sister was 4 years younger than me. So 9, 10. So I run through the house really quickly so I can tell my parents. Carly says outside, this is happening, blah, blah, blah. We got to go. And then within less than a minute, we're all across the street in front of my sister to help her. My neighbor, Chris, is nowhere to be found. I think he ran off and freaked out.
Of course. Of course.
Carlisa said he ran inside to get some scissors or something to try to cut him down. I don't know. But he's nowhere to be found. Yeah. But what's really interesting about this story, right? It's terrifying. We want to make sure she's okay. Like I said, we were there within less than a minute. When we get there, this woman had appeared from what seemed to be out of nowhere and was holding my sister on her shoulders. And what I saw was a shorter Hispanic woman. She was quiet. I don't remember her saying anything to us. And she was just kind of struggling to hold my sister up on her shoulders because she was such a small statured woman.
Sure.
But she was, kind of alleviating that weight from my sister. The rope was entangled very tightly around her hair. Okay. And she ended up losing a lot of her hair from that accident. She had to like grow it back and everything. But she, I think, she had less of an injury thanks to this woman.
Yeah.
So anyway, my parents get there and they're like, thank you, ma'am, so much. We've got it now. And so my dad kind of steps in to help. And as soon as my dad stepped in, this woman vanished, completely gone. And where we are situated in the neighborhood, it's not like we're right on a corner and she could have just darted off. So I don't think it was adrenaline, losing lapses of time and her just walking away and us not noticing. Like she really vanished. And the other really weird thing about all of it is, like I said, she didn't say a word to us. And then later, when my sister was fine and we untangled the rope and all that kind of stuff, and we're just kind of reflecting on it, me and my parents and my sister were all like, wow, like, thank God for that woman, blah, blah, blah. And for some reason, we started describing her. I guess maybe we found subconsciously something odd about her. So I was like, yeah, like, for some reason, I started talking about how she had dark hair and blah, blah, blah. And my dad was like, no, what are you talking about? She was like a tall woman with light hair. And my mom said she was a redheaded woman. Like we all had vastly different descriptions of her.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange experience. And my sister has had some other experiences where kind of like near death or near accident experiences where she should have been hurt or even like killed and she was completely fine. And there would be weird things where it was like it seems like something has attached to her and is protecting her in life.
Interesting.
So, but that's like one of my favorite stories. I love that story and I don't have an explanation.
You take things, like I said, you don't take things seriously, but you've had some pretty cool adventures. You want to talk about any of those to my spooky friends, especially being locked up in a jail? We were just talking about, right? Now, she didn't do anything. Chelsea didn't do anything. All right. Let me make that clear. She did this on purpose.
They locked me down. They finally caught me.
That's a different tape, people.
Yeah. My friends and I had decided that we wanted to investigate and kind of have our own experiences. And I thought it'd be great for the show to be able to speak about my personal experiences as well. So now I've been to an investigation at the Missouri State Penitentiary. Also been to the Squirrel Cage Jail here in Iowa, and that one we stayed the entire night, and had some really, really cool interactions there.
Nice. And let's give the spooky friends a little tease. Name one interaction at the Squirrel Jail in Iowa that you had that really didn't really shake you, but kind of made you like, ooh, okay, what the hell was that?
I'll give you my best one that I had there.
Love it.
I had gone to use the restroom. There's one working restroom in the jail. Okay. Love that my story's starting out that way. But so I was off on my own, and my friends were on the total opposite side of the jail. And I was washing my hands, and as I'm kind of scrubbing and I'm looking down, I watch as the faucet turns by itself and the water shuts off.
Nice.
And I was like,
oh my goodness.
Okay, great.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you why don't you start and cover your cryptid?
All right. So today I've decided to cover the Pukwudgie. I got interested in the Pukwudgie a few years ago. I didn't even know that they existed. I was actually listening to Lore, the podcast, and so he talked about the Pukwudgie in one of like his first season episodes or something, and I was like, what is that? Like, I've never heard of that. So since then I've been like super intrigued. So I decided that I wanted to tell a story, something probably a little different from what we've probably heard about the Pukwudgie, and even maybe some Native American lore, because as you'll see, this mythology is Native American. So I'll be reading, and I hope you like it. So the word Pukwudgie stems from the Native American tongue. The lore is associated with the Algonquin, the Ojibwe, and the Wampanoag tribes, among others. The root Bagwaj or Bagwaji actually means wilderness or wild. And so the native word is actually Bagwajinini, which then translates to a little person or a person of the woods or the wilderness or the wild. So if you really think about it, the word Bagwajinini kind of sounds like Pukwudgie, which is actually where it stems from. So the Native American word is Bagwajinini. Pukwudgie is like the way that us Native Americans came and we just modernized it or made it ours.
Sure.
So Pukwudgies are typically described as small creatures who dwell in the forest. They're about knee-high to 3 feet tall. Their faces are somewhat human-like. They've been described with front-facing eyes. They tend to have like larger noses. Sometimes they're described with like long ears or pointy ears. Kind of reminds me of like a troll or a goblin.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, troll. Gotcha.
Yeah. Their skin oftentimes is kind of gray, maybe smooth, or they'll have fur on them. And if not, even porcupine quills, which is kind of creepy
that's interesting.
and weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
they walk on 2 legs. So you won't see them on 4. You'll see them on 2.
Okay. Got 2 legs. Gotcha.
Yeah. So according to the Native American lore, these creatures have long existed in North America, way before the settlers came in. And for a while, the Bagwajinini or the Pukwudgies lived actually in harmony with humans. But apparently that changed.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So one legend from the Wampanoag says that everything between the Bagwajinini and the humans was great until humans got distracted with their relationship with Mashap. Now, Mashap is a giant, very benevolent creation or creator deity. And he is the person who was responsible for creating the Cape Cod area of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So it seems that Mashap was beloved by the humans, and the Pukwudgies kind of got a little jealous. So they became a little mischievous, trying to get attention from the people. But this actually bothered the people and aggravated them. So they complained to Mashap and they said, hey, these Pukwudgies, they're bothering us. So Mashap was like, cool, okay, I'm going to take care of it. And he went and he scattered the Pukwudgies all through New England. Well, as you can think and probably determine that, the Pukwudgies weren't very happy with that. So Mashap and his wife, who's known as Granny Squannet, left for a little bit. Okay. And as in their absence, the Pukwudgies returned. But this time, they returned with a vengeance because they were PO'd. They were PO'd. And so what happened, instead of being mischievous and kind of just bothering people, they really took it up a notch. They started kidnapping children, burning villages. And and then apparently they even, just outright killed people.
Okay. That is up a notch. Yeah. And this is like the first level of ghosting, right? This is like we like ghosted them. We're like, hey, Pukwudgie's cool. Yeah. Hey, why'd you return my call? I'm a Pukwudgie. Let's go. What's going on here?
Yeah, they went from 0 to psycho really quick.
Ooh.
So
reminds me of an ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeesh. So it turns out, so Granny Squannet and Mashap find out that they're like basically killing the tribes people, and they come back, and Mashap's like, "Don't worry, I got my 5 sons. They're gonna take care of the problem."
Okay.
Sends his 5 sons over. The 5 sons get lured and tricked because the Pukwudgies are tricksters. They get tricked by the Pukwudgies and lured into a trap where they all get shot dead, basically, by magical arrows.
Wow.
So at this point, Mashap is really PO'd, and he's like, I'm going to do it myself. He goes to take care of the problem.
Yeah.
But again, the Pukwudgies are like, we're smarter than you. And they lure Mashap to, I guess, this place in the woods where they shoot him with arrows. Now, the thing about the lore is it's not determined whether they kill Mashap or if Mashap just decides to turn it in, like white flag, like give up and leave.
Right.
Because he doesn't show up back in the lore after that, apparently, from what I was gathering. So it was pretty serious. Like these Pukwudgies mean business.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah. So translate that to today. Pukwudgies are actually still known to be tricksters. They're also known as killers. They lure you to the cliffs and push you off.
All right.
Yeah. They shoot you with arrows, and they're known to also kidnap children. And they're shapeshifters, apparently. So they can shapeshift.
That is a heck of a combination. A shapeshifter, I can trick you. I'm smarter than you. I'm going to push you off a cliff, and then I'm going to shoot you with an arrow just to make sure you're dead. Okay.
No, and if that wasn't enough, apparently, when they kill you, they actually still have control of your spirit.
What?
I know. So like it translates to the other side. Like these things are ridiculous. Like I'm just like, what?
Ridiculous.
Yeah, they're probably my favorite cryptid. It's just it's so crazy. So apparently, obviously, if you see one, you're supposed to leave it alone.
I had a paranormal experience at the age of 11, and it was so crazy to where, and I talk about that on the show also. That's probably the first episode, and that questioned everything going forward from that point. So I've always been, looking and trying to dive into the paranormal just to see what, that experience that I had, and, have others, had those type of same things happen to them. And so, throughout the years, I've always talked, about the paranormal activities that go on in people's homes and the experiences that people have. And so, that kind of prompted me, you know what? I need to start a podcast. And then so I went ahead and started this podcast, Strange Darkness Radio.
Nice. So I have to ask, Bobby, tell me a little bit. I know you probably have already said it to your audience, but I have a whole new audience here. Would love to hear your little paranormal experience at age 11.
Well, let me make this brief because it's kind of a little detailed. But
right,
go ahead. Yeah.
Nice teaser.
Exactly. Okay, a little teaser. Well, we were at the drive-in. We came back home. I really had to go to the restroom. Didn't want to, find my way back to the car and all that jazz. So I waited, until we got home. Me and my dad came to the door of our home. We entered the home. There was a glow, a light that was coming from like the right side of the living room area. And as we entered, I tried to dart off and go to the restroom. And then as my dad, saw whatever was happening in the kitchen in the living room area, he told me to freeze, get out of the house. Somebody's in the house. And I was like, I need to go to the restroom. So so being a kid, my first thought is, because my dad was in the military, and my first thought is, I gotta go to the bathroom. So for whatever reason, I bypassed the hall bathroom to go to my parents' bathroom. I go down to the end of the hall, and as I look over to the right in my parents' bed, there is a long figure laying in the bed, and I froze. And then as I look at this figure, I can, it was like a movie playing. I can hear my dad calling me, but I couldn't make out what he was saying as he was running down the hall. And as he puts his hand on my shoulder to grab me, the whatever figure was laying in the bed just totally went like into the bed. It just, the blankets were still disheveled. It just slowly just like, just melted into the bed. And he's like, I told you to get out of the house, and everything. And what had happened was, in the kitchen area, all the dishes were out of the cabinets, all of the food was out of the refrigerator. It was it was like somebody ransacked the house. And then as the police came, there was nobody that entered the home. They said someone must have entered the home and locked their door on the way out, because there was no sign of any entries or anything. And so that was my, first paranormal experience.
Wow. Did you in the paranormal and, especially the Warren, what What interested you in that?
I love this question. Ever since I was a little kid, my mom is really into it, and I talk about her a lot on the show. She got me into it because we used to watch a lot of paranormal television shows together. Like everyone talks about how back when they started, it was Unsolved Mysteries, Sightings, Beyond Belief, Fact or Faked. I love that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then me and my mom watched a lot of Paranormal State with that guy who had Lorraine on a lot. And that's where I learned about her. So I didn't know much about Ed and Lorraine until I started watching those things with my mom. But what really got me into the paranormal was when I was 8 years old. I saw the movie The Entity, and it hooked me on the whole thought of paranormal, the whole idea of things like that happening and people going through it. I was hooked. I wanted to be a parapsychologist when I was that age. I thought for sure that's what I would grow. I'd grow up and be Barry Tapp. So.
Yeah. And so people, correct me if I'm wrong, Stevie. The Entity was about that woman who was molested by these two.
There were three. There was one big one and two little ones, according to her, and her name was Doris Bither or Bither. It depends on who you get your information from. But she claimed it was one big one and two little ones, and they would hold her down and assault her repeatedly, and then they made a movie about it in the 80s, 1982.
And by the way, if you get a chance, this is an old school movie, and I always recommend old school horror to all my spooky friends. Go back. It's kind of hard to find. It is freaky. I mean, they're doing things to this poor woman that you're just like, oh my God.
And they were really, the movie was so well known for how good the effects were. It was the first time they'd attempted anything like that. And the effects were very, a lot of people thought they were incredible.
Yeah. Awesome. And, everyone.
So I was talking about Tomes of Terror that I think had just come out to haunted bookstores and libraries, but I was saying, I'm working on haunted hospitals right now, and Rhonda Parrish and the co-author and I were working on this book. We got a call from a gentleman who wanted to share a story about a hospital he worked at, the Pinoca Institute in Alberta, Canada. And he had worked there for many years. It had been more than 10 years since he worked there. He's retired now, but he wanted to share a story that he'd never shared before. And it was about a woman. So the chapter's called "A Woman Possessed." And it was a woman who had lived most of her life in that hospital. She had no family. And she would get into bouts of violence where they'd take 3 or 4 people to hold her down because she had this superhuman strength that she could throw them off. She would scratch, she would bite. She'd be calm and fine and then just go right into this. Other things would happen with her room where she'd be complaining that her room was like a meat locker. It was so cold and freezing. They go in and there was nothing wrong with the heater. Everything was fine. So they move her into another vacant room. And, when the minute they move her into the other room, the other room suddenly becomes a meat locker, and the room she was in, it goes back to normal temperature. So weird stuff like that happened. They even had meetings. They did bring in priests. They were wondering if she needed some sort of exorcism. But one of the nights where he was working by himself, there's a bunch of them doing an overnight shift, and they've got the break room with the TV and stuff like that where they're hanging out when they're not doing their rounds. So it was his turn to go do some rounds. And as he's walking down the hall, he walks by a room and he hears voices, because sometimes you'd hear her talking to someone else and you could actually hear another voice in the room. So he's like, oh my God, is there another patient in there? So he opens the room. It's pitch black. She's sleeping. There's no one else in the room with her, but she's sleeping while standing on the wall, about 4 feet above the floor over top of her bed. She's completely horizontal. Her face is down. Her hair's hanging down over her face. Her body's she's moving like she's breathing, like in her sleep. There's no one else in the room, and that's what he sees. He doesn't know what to do. He's kind of like, I don't know what to do. So he slowly backs up, closes the door, goes back to the TV room, and never says anything because he doesn't know, did he see something, whatever.
Yeah.
So he calls in and he tells the radio program this. So I'm researching for haunted hospitals. What I do when someone tells me a story, I talk to the producer, ask George, can I get the producer to find out who that was? Would they be willing to talk to me? Because I'd love to interview them for my... So lo and behold, a couple weeks later, I have a call with this person. Well, here's the interesting thing. One of his colleagues who worked there, also worked at the same hospital, recognized his voice, knew who he was, and asked to meet him. Tim Hortons is like a Dunkin' Donuts. It's a coffee shop chain here in Canada. They met at the local Timmy's. They met at the local Timmy's, eh? And the colleague told a story about one other night within that same year or two that happened to them, and they had walked by and heard her having a discussion with some other voice that was coming from the room that didn't sound like her. When they walked in, they saw her sleep standing vertically with her feet about a foot off the floor, facing, she had her eyes closed and everything, and she was just kind of sleep standing, like not looking at, but looking straight. And again, that colleague didn't tell anyone because they didn't know what to do. It was so unbelievable. They backed out of the story. And the only reason they confessed was because they heard the story and they said, oh my God, I saw something. Well, I didn't see the exact same thing, but I saw something very similar. And so that was like, that stuck with me. And I remember telling the story at a late night author event.
You want to go to paranormal site anywhere in the world?
Probably Petra in Jordan is my want to go to place, because I've read about jinn allegedly being there. I've just, ever since I was a kid, I think I saw it in the third Indiana Jones movie, and I've always wanted to go there. I've always, and there's a series on Netflix called Jinn, and it's not great, but it's Jordanian, if I remember correctly. And the first episode is set there, and it just, I don't know, I just really, that's always kind of called to me.
Yeah. And has there been a place, just really quickly, have you, and I don't know if you guys investigated all, or have you been to, where you've been to a place that shook you a little bit, or, maybe you've been somewhere where, again, you heard about and wanted to check it out?
I walked past the Cecil Hotel once in downtown LA.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't go inside, but just walking past it, man, it was like the Eye of Sauron. It felt like someone was like rubbing your third eye with sandpaper. It was a very intense feeling just walking past it. I can't imagine actually going inside.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, I hear you. So, Paul, same question. Bucket list, where you would like to go paranormal?
Hoya Forest in Romania.
Oh, yes. Yeah, explain that to people who are not familiar with it. Can you give us like a brief idea? Because that is an awesome place.
Yeah, so it's this beautiful, Romania itself is a beautiful and much unloved country by the rest of Europe. It's often looked down upon as a former Soviet republic, but it's for anybody who loves the spooky, we're all entrenched in a bit of a love affair with Romania because of Dracula. And so the Hoya Forest is this incredibly atmospheric portion of land that is, some would say it is a thin veil between both sides, and it's supposed to be inhabited by numerous nefarious spirits from the other side who will often lead travelers to a disappearing or a sticky end. So I'd like to go with plenty of people.
So they
and
can
make
die
sure
first.
Yeah, well, and make sure I've
Brennan,
done
you don't look
some done some cardio beforehand, so I can make sure I'm not the slowest person there, and keep an eye out for the bears that wander around there. But yeah, that would definitely be mine, especially in Europe.
Most of us There's a lot of poltergeistal activity.
Yeah, right.
This had none of that. It was so subtle. It was unbelievable. Anyway, he was basically nominated by his bishop for his diocese to take over. Each Catholic diocese needs to have at least one exorcist. And their exorcist in their diocese was retiring. So his bishop nominated him to take the place of the exorcist. So he had to go to Rome. He had to do some formal training. And he'd come back, and he said it was quite like, there was no cause for it, really. It was kind of, he viewed it as just a box ticking exercise.
Sure.
Anyway, he then got in touch with a woman who said, can you come and bless the house? Which she often gets. He, as a priest, said he'd often get.
Sure.
Requests for house blessings, things are going on.
Yeah.
When he turned up, this woman was acting really strange, and he wasn't sure. And he thought she was being abused by the partner. And he left anyway. And as he's walking down the street, the partner runs after him, and the partner's being attacked by her.
Oh.
And the partner says, she's there's something in her. She needs help. So he goes back and pays her a visit, and he's convinced then, he can tell in her eyes, she's oppressed. I think she mentioned something. I can't even recall what it was, because I'm getting to the point I'm getting to, as opposed to regaling this story. Long story short, he goes to the bishop to ask for permission to do an exorcism. The bishop denies it and says a confession is as good as an exorcism. And he argues the toss. Why have you put me through the exorcism training then? Then the bishop outright, it's more or less it's a admin exercise. He basically says, I can't authorize an exorcism without her having confession. So he goes, well, I'm not going to get her in a confessional booth. But he said, well, will you give her one more try? So he does. He invites her around to the priest's house or the parochial home for tea. And she turns up. He hears the gate go. She's walking up the thing with a pram. She's got a youngster with her, about maybe 4 months old, whatever. Yeah. And she comes in. She sits down, all nice as pie. He goes, do you want a cup of tea? Yeah, all good. Goes in, makes a cup of tea. Comes in with a tray with some biscuits on and stuff like that. And as he looks up, she's holding the baby above her head, above his glass coffee table, and smiling at the priest and saying, what would you do? Sort of thing. What are you going to do? Can you stop me? Blah, blah, blah. He panics that much, he drops the tray. And then when he's picking the stuff up, she's back to herself, and she's putting the baby back in the pram, and she's like, are you okay, Father? What's wrong? What's happened? And she's completely lost it. He goes, as in she's back to normal. She's lost the oppression, if you will. Yeah. So he then returns to the bishop and says, we are not getting her in a confessional booth. And the bishop says, my hands are tied. You can't do it without. So he says, I can't do it then. I can't, you give me a job I can't do, and I want to give him notice, sort of thing. Yeah. So only the Pope can approve you being laicized, apparently. So I'm learning all this through reading the letter, or reading the email even. Yeah. So the Pope, the bishop writes a full explanation as to what's gone on. The bishop immediately grants them being laicized, which is suspicious in itself. It's kind of like, no questions asked. Anyway, so but the weird thing is, apparently once a priest, always a priest. It's not like if he wanted to become a priest again, he has to go through the training again. He could literally just make a phone call and say, put me back on, and he's on. And he can also perform certain, last rites in an emergency and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway, as I'm halfway through this story, I'm, as I say, as you've heard, I do it in a different sort of accent, a little bit more serious.
Yeah, right.
A little bit more well-spoken. And I'm really concentrating on what I'm doing. I become convinced that someone stood behind that curtain that separates my recording room to the door. So much so to the point that I stop recording. I take my earphones off and I say hello 3 times.
Sure.
Then I put my headphones back on. I start recording again. Then I hear my name. Then I take my headphones off and I'm like, someone's definitely behind that curtain. So like in a cartoon, I've got my umbrella and I'm poking the curtain from my seating position.
Yeah. I gotcha.
But honest to God, something was in that room. It's not left me now, even now. And I've spoke about this numerous times on numerous versions of me numerous shows, that this was something that there was something in that
experiences. But while we've been talking, has anything entered your mind that you recall that has again anything really spooky that you can remember?
Well, I did someone's apartment, and her daughter would not sleep in her room, and she's like 10 years old. And I'm like trying to figure out, why won't she sleep in her room?
Yeah.
And they lived there like 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
and she still won't sleep in her room. So I went there, did an investigation, and the second I walked into the mom's room, I felt bad energy, especially in the closet.
Okay.
And then when I walked into the daughter's room, immediately I saw a demonic creature crouching down on the daughter's bookshelf where all her stuffed animals were sitting.
Oh.
There's like a space between the stuffed animals, and that's where they were sitting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And when you say demonic,
It
how
was
did you know it was
very interesting.
Yeah. How do you know it was demonic?
Because
What
of
gave
the
you that?
way it was, the eyes, the red eyes, and the way it was shaped, the way it was looking at me, its energy. And then I looked in the closet, and there was a tall man in there crouching.
Oh.
It wasn't really crouching. He was just kind of bent over
Yeah.
under the shelf, standing up.
At its roots, some belief in ghosts. Now, the beliefs in ghosts are not the same from religion to religion, but every religion has a belief in ghosts. And one of the things that I found that was most interesting is that in the Buddhist religion and in the Eastern countries, they have a belief and a response to ghosts that are almost the opposite of what we do in the Western country. So, as you mentioned, I have 2 presentations about ghosts that I have shared with over 100 audiences all over the country. The one is called "Things Still Go Bump in the Night," and the other one is "A Few Favorite Haunts." In fact, I'm sharing both of those, one tomorrow with one group and one Tuesday with another group. And about every 4th time that I share those, when I'm done, somebody in the audience will come up to me and go, "Can I tell you about this experience I had with this ghost?" Sure, go ahead. So they'll proceed to tell me about their mother's-in-law's haunted house that they inherited, or staying in a hotel where they were in. But my point, John, is that almost always their response to having to encounter a ghost is one of fear. It's a Western response. If you mention ghosts, the most typical response will be retreat and fear. For Buddhists, they have exactly the opposite response. So they believe that ghosts are I've never been able to get a translation that's very good, but they call them suffering spirits. And they believe that they should be pitied, and we should have compassion for ghosts instead of running away and being scared by them. I think that's a very interesting contrast. And now I blame Stephen King for a lot of that. And
so do I.
There were plenty of scary ghost stories before Stephen King came along, but he kind of made it Hollywood version. But I thought, that's an interesting aspect I've learned from our research that most people don't know. So it kind of, and I can't imagine that in China or India where they practice Buddhism, I can't imagine that ghosts are much different than what they are here, but they have a very different reaction to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that leads me to my next point. Have you ever had a skeptic come up and say, "Oh, ghosts aren't real, Randy. What is this? You know, come on. That your presentation was a bunch of BS."
Every time. No, not every time, but often. Yes, often. In fact, here's how I counter that, John. So about halfway into the presentation, I have a set of slides that I'll go, you know, every time I do this operation, I have somebody giving me this. Now you can't see me, but I give them the crossed arms and the doubting face, you know, and that of course draws a bunch of laughs. And I go, for them and for everybody else, I'm going to share with you the scores of famous, intelligent, educated, sophisticated people, all who believe in ghosts. And I just blow them away with examples of scientists and politicians and musicians and athletes, all that they all know and they all recognize, but they didn't know they believed in ghosts. They were really, you know, everything from Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan to Dale Earnhardt Jr. and, you know, you name it. And that kind of quells a lot of the, you know, it's just a bunch of poppycock. I will still have some come up and do that. But after I give that little piece and show them the examples, you know, I'm going, well, these people, you know, my answer is, are all these people crazy? You know, is Abraham Lincoln, because he believed in ghosts? Ronald Reagan, is he crazy? And Winston Churchill, and, you know, so that kind of stifles it before it gets very far. But yes, of course, you know, I've shared this with thousands of people, so I get every kind of reaction you can think.
So I'm going to start by saying that I don't think all ghosts or spirit entities need to be ejected from the home. Some of them want to be there because it's their home too, or they're your family. And maybe not necessarily like the family you know, maybe they're an ancestor or a spirit guide. So in those cases, I think it's totally fine if they share space with you. You just have to learn to be okay with them.
Okay.
Now, that's not always the case. So I'm going to mention, I'm going to tell the story of a woman who I helped clear her space. And some people call this a house blessing. Some people call it a space clearing, whatever works for you. So I got to her space and she was having incredible anxiety every time she came home. She felt like she was being watched. So I got into her space and I immediately felt like, like I feel creepy, like yucky, something's yucky here. And there was it was a beautiful old apartment, great old building. So I'm not a medium, but sometimes I can hear. Sometimes I can be clairaudient, and I could immediately hear the spirit in her house. I said, does the name George mean anything to you? And she said, yeah, that was the man who lived here before me. And I said, oh, guess what? He's still here.
Oh.
And so George was still there, and George was a total creeper, and he was watching her sleep and bathe and go to the bathroom. And she said she felt like people didn't really want to come to her home, and there were just I mean, her pet was uncomfortable. There was every sign of an entity who really was just not the best. So I was able to interact with George. We did clear the space physically. There are several ways to do that. You can use bells, you can use sage or other herbs to burn. Like I said, there's lots of ways to go about it. And I helped her figure out how she would maintain her boundaries in the space clearing situation. And George agreed to leave, but I asked him if he would actually leave the whole building, because it was a building of all women.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a space that was just all apartments for women and female identifying people. And I was just like, George, it'd be really great if you could find somewhere else to be besides watching these ladies sleep and undress. George was not ready to cross over into a new life. He was kind of a miserable spirit. And in his case, I could clairaudiently hear him. That's not always the case, but I'm really glad I could, because he definitely needed to go. He was not, he was sapping the energy of that woman very specifically, but probably also the building in general. And because he had lived there, he felt entitled to the space. He felt like, I have every right to be here. I lived here too. And in fact, the curtains in her living room were hung by him during his physical life.
Wow.
So yeah, he was just like, well, this is still my stuff. And I'm like, guess what? You can't use this anymore. You have to go. What you're doing isn't right, and you know it. Like, you're invading on her privacy.
Did he ever get physically abusive? Any complaints about that?
Nope. No. Luckily, no. He was not the type of entity that was touching and or moving objects. He was either he didn't want to, or he was just a voyeur, maybe.
Gotcha.
But
yeah,
just
kind of
a voyeur. He was a voyeur. Let's leave it at that.
He's kind of a dirty old.